In 2018, I decided that I no longer wanted to fly for the Marine Corps. It was the most difficult decision I had ever made in my professional career, professional life, but it also affected me emotionally. It affected my identity almost. And I want to make this video so I can tell you about that story. Whether you're in or were in the Marine Corps, I think this is probably applicable across all the branches, and also maybe in any other kind of professional life where you're changing your job. Because I want to show you that, ultimately change is okay. I think almost learning to deal with change is almost a skill in and of itself. I'll tell you my story to hopefully create a relatable experience with y'all, so you see all the steps I had to take to, well, in this case, particularly change my MOS in the Marine Corps, but also just go through the steps for change and explain what I also ended up discovering through that. Basically how I discovered a new identity and how that actually became something I was able to do full time after the Marine Corps. So I'll go into all of that. Without further ado, let's kick it off. All right, here we go. So initially, I'm not gonna go into all the backstory, but essentially I was dealing with a lot of flight anxiety for one reason or another. And also it got to the point, right, where I didn't feel comfortable getting in the aircraft anymore at all. And I had to talk to my leadership about that. So after I broke the news to them, right, it started a cascading series of events. After I told them, like, I am not comfortable flying with the aircraft anymore, this is my final decision. I mean, I was basically in the tears in my OPSO's office. It was just because I felt like I was a quitter, right? Maybe some people thought that. I don't care. That's not the point of this video. Once I made that decision, I then went to talk to my CO. He was like, hey man, is this your final decision? Like, because once this happens, you're out of my hands. I can't control your future. I didn't know what the future had in store for me, but I said yes. So I filled out an administrative action form. Within 2 days, I was at the Marine Air Group, so at the group level. I wasn't at the squadron level anymore. And I was basically a glorified paper pusher at that point. And so I quickly started going through the process. And it's funny at the time, like, you expect that people will care for you sometimes, but in reality, everybody's doing a job and they have quotas to fill. It was funny, the guy at the time at the squadron was just trying to fill a couple of like deployment slots that weren't really deployments. They were like, hey, go stand watch for 6 months in the desert. And nobody wanted to tell me that they couldn't force me to do it, but they pretended as if they could make me do it. Fortunately, I stood my ground because I wanted to change my occupational specialty as soon as possible. I wanted to actually start doing other things in the Marine Corps instead of sitting there and doing, paper pushing, like whatever. So here I am, everything's going forward, and I have to do a series of interviews as my administrative paperwork's going through. One of them was finally, ultimately, with the wing commander, who's a 2-star general at the time. I sit down there with him and I tell him what's up, tell him my story, told him my background, and I ended up touching on the fact that I did computer science and IT in the Naval Academy, and that I really enjoyed hacking back in the day. And I didn't intend for that to push me in any direction. I had no idea. I was just giving him my life story. And then he was like, you know what, let me make a call. Next thing I know, I'm getting an email about potentially me going to work for like Marfor Cyber that was just getting stood up. Long story short, none of that ended up working out. But because we were waiting and anticipating that, I ended up being stuck at the group for a whole year. Eventually, I was like, guys, I can't wait any longer. Get me another job. Pick whatever MOS. I ended up getting public affairs, which is in the Marine Corps called Communication Strategy and Operations, ComStrat. I loved it, okay? So let me just step back for a second. So here I am. I don't know what the future has in store for me. I'm at a Marine Air Group where people are treating me as a number, basically, just trying to push me through. People are straight up telling me that, we can't give you a decent fitness report just because you're not in a flying status, and we're going to compare you to a bunch of flyers. So basically my career was kind of like going downhill, realizing that Like I'm not following the yellow brick road that most lieutenants should be following. Well, at that time I was a captain. I was newly minted captain. And so I knew the cards were stacked against me as far as my career. So I knew whatever new job I was going to pick, I had to knock it out of the park. But at this time, something else was happening. I had just recently closed on my first 56 unit, well, my first multifamily apartment complex with my parents, which was a 56 unit apartment complex outside of Indianapolis. And I found a new passion outside of the Marine Corps as well, that was real estate investing. And I started wondering, if this could be something I wanted to do full time. I also started an education company, which was basically just me showing all the mistakes I made getting into real estate investing and sharing that with my, with the community I was growing. And I started building a team, and it was a lot of fun. A lot of people at the time were, a lot of the other pilots I was with at the time, they had other hobbies, whether it was sports, maybe they weren't married. I was married, so they were hanging out on the weekends a lot more. They had other passions. This was my passion. This was my hobby outside of the Marine Corps. And so that started developing. Now, keep moving along. I'm going to Public Affairs Qualification School in Maryland, and I finished that. Then I moved to New Orleans, and COVID hits. We have another baby, so we have 2 little boys now. Settled into a new house just outside the city. I'm not going to work because of COVID. The world's changing. Everything's crazy. But I keep finding time, making time outside of work hours when they even during COVID, we still had to work, but it was very different. And here I was. I ended up building a company basically with my team that really started growing massively and teaching military members how to invest in real estate. And it's called Active Duty Passive Income, or ADPI for short. And we started seeing amazing testimonials, like people were transforming their lives. And essentially the idea was like, hey, if you're in the military and you want to find another identity outside of the military, that it has financial benefit, that has income potential, that could be your career as you transition out of the military, why don't you look into investing in real estate? Because not only is it a good, you can grow your net worth and equity as a nest egg in each property that you own, because either it appreciates and you're paying down the loan, so your equity in it grows. Not to mention somebody else is, paying down that loan for you, your tenants. So it's kind of like a forced TSP almost. So not only is that happening, but you're also making income on top of that every single month if you play your cards right, if you analyze the property right. So you buy the right property, you can also be making income every single month. So that's what ended up happening is I started growing my portfolio, started syndicating large apartment complexes and mobile home parks as well, went full cycle on those, and I was like, yep, that's what I'm doing. I'm stepping out full time. I'm gonna continue building my my company, right? My education company, ADPI. Check us out at activedutypassiveincome.com. And I'm going to be investing in real estate full time with my family and with partners. And so that's what I did. And so I stepped out after my first tour as a Comstrat officer. I loved working at Mar Forez in New Orleans. I loved the team there. I loved Comstrat as far as occupational specialties go from what I had experienced. But I also knew that my new passion, what I wanted to do, was to do full-time real estate investing and building my education company. So that's what I'm doing now. If you have any questions and maybe you feel like I missed a step, I was kind of just stream of consciousness here. But long story short, change happens. Change sometimes is almost forced upon us. And I think what that whole event helped me with was dealing with change. So I would just urge anybody that if you feel like something is not going the right way, the reality is any kind of change is a good change then. Well, I shouldn't say any kind of change, but if you know that the direction you're headed is definitely the wrong direction, then even a few degrees off could make it better, right? And so I've had to have many changes happen in my professional career, even in my company, all this kind of stuff, relationships, partnerships, you name it, and change many times that was because we knew we were going in the wrong direction, or I knew I was going in the wrong direction. Basically, every time turned out to be a good thing. So if you're worried about change and you're still in the military and you're trying to think what could be your next step in life, I would just encourage you to be bold and to make the best decision you can for yourself and be positive while doing it. And I think that with that mindset, things will turn out in your favor. So I don't know if anybody needed to hear that, and I know it's not super encouraging, but I do think that change is something that is a almost practice skill, and it should be worth your while if you know you're going in the wrong direction, right? So that's my 2 cents there. Thank you for watching this video. Mark Yancich is out. See you later.